It's the Weekly Wrap with your host, broadcasting legend Bruce Wolf, and his trusty sidekick, comedian Tim Slagle. And now, without further ado, Bruce Wolf.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap. And of course, my favorite part of the show at the beginning when Tim unveils the background behind him. And I've got to think you're so prescient, Tim, that you've got Stormy Daniels' G-string behind you. That's what I'm going to go with. Am I right? Am I
right? You're pretty close. Unfortunately, I couldn't get a flight out of Florence in time.
That's not bad. Please keep your head strategically there in front of Michelangelo's David. Either you've got a small head or David's not as well endowed as I recall. That's all I think. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. But that was a big story about 5 days ago, and then then there was this shooting in Nashville. Well, let's move that by the boards right now, because if we were live, we would be telling you that just a few minutes ago, Donald Trump, the 45th president of the United States, becomes the first ex-president to be indicted. And I got to tell you, Tim, I was talking to somebody who's a legal expert, who's pretty nationally known, and is on some of the shows that we both probably watch and is in the magazines that we read. And it was his thinking just a couple of days ago that it looked like Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan district attorney, was going to give up the ghost on this one and leave it to the feds, in the various other places that they are, because this is such a cockamamie, far-fetched thing that even Bragg wasn't going to bring it. But and I don't know what the particulars are, because this just came out a couple of minutes ago, but I assume it's the same thing, this BS in-kind campaign contribution that Trump made, but with the hush money to Stormy Daniels, which even the feds didn't want to pursue. And it's not like they weren't trying to pursue this. So look, it sounds ridiculous, doesn't it?
It comes as a surprise to me, because I was almost certain that they had been given the month off. I thought that was the end of it. They said, they won't be.
Right.
And I said, well, I didn't know they got the month off because they were done, that they had come up with an indictment. That's and if they think this is going to stop Trump from running for office, they need to watch the Nelson Mandela story.
Okay, right, exactly. Right. Except, Mandela wasn't a germaphobe, and he was able to spend 27 years in prison. Of course, he got visits from Joe Biden, didn't he? I mean, weren't they arrested together or something? And Biden's
they got arrested in Selma together.
Yeah, exactly.
Not a joke. Not a joke.
Not a joke. So, no, the thing is Trump apparently does not want to go into jail. I mean, he doesn't like germs. He doesn't like to be confined that way. I mean, he may cry like Jimmy Cagney at the end of one of his movies, when he was asked, to not look like a heroic guy in front of the kids when he was going to the chair or something like that. So
I think the odds.
You remember that one?
No, but
okay.
I think the
That's
odds.
fine.
I think the odds of him going to jail are slim to none. It's if there's more than a fine attached with this, I'll be surprised.
Well, the thing is that basically it's a misdemeanor that is never prosecuted, but they had to bootstrap it onto a federal crime in order to make it the 5-year statute of limitations. And Bragg may have gotten this indictment right now. Bragg, for those of you watching at home, some funny pictures that Chris, our producer, is putting up, and it's Donald Trump being wrestled down by
six-fingered cops. It looks like,
right.
So it's
right.
obviously Chat GPT.
It might have been maybe Bragg had to do the indictment now, because it was now or never, because there was a statute of limitations problem. I mean, the statute was running pretty quickly. So who knows what this thinking is. But, it's good, because now Bragg can, the case won't be doing anything for a while. And now Bragg can concentrate on stopping, criminals from getting away with murder in New York, because crime is way, way up. But an orange man right now we see a lot of orange, as Chris puts up in a nice prison outfit. But yeah, it's kind of ridiculous, and of course the big news, Trump presidentially this week was going to be him versus DeSantis, and a lot of people wondering when's DeSantis going to really go after Trump. He certainly doesn't want to go after him on this because he doesn't like the, as he said, the Soros style prosecution. I mean, nobody's in favor of this.
And he's next. I mean, if he runs for office, what are the odds that you think they'll try to indict DeSantis for something?
Oh, it's open season. There's no question. The only innocent people right now are transgender killers. They're the only innocent people right now. They're the victims. And
sure.
I know we'll get to this a little bit later, but I mean, just today, and we're taping on Thursday, so there was some kind of disturbance at the Tennessee Capitol. I didn't see any Viking guy with his face painted in there, and
well, that was other news. That was other news from today. Did you see that?
He was released, right?
He was released. Yeah, with 4 months to go in his sentence.
With how much time?
4 months. He did 11 months. He did 11 months in solitary confinement.
Wow, and I think he got the time off because he wrote on a blackboard, "I will not enter the Capitol," 1,000 times. So thank you, Bart Simpson, for that. So yeah, I mean,
I heard a tape of him today. I was not aware of it. Diane Sawyer, always there, hard hitting news, got the interview with him.
Diane Sawyer is still around.
I think it was Diane Sawyer.
Yeah. Are you mixing? I mean,
I don't know.
Didn't she retire a number of years ago?
No, she was 60 Minutes.
No. Leslie Stahl, you're thinking.
Leslie Stahl. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all these old blondes are fungible to you, Tim. I mean, I think you just committed a sex crime right now.
Old blonde liberals.
Leslie Stahl.
Sorry, Bruce. The old blonde liberals all look alike to me.
You know what the problem is? The problem is that I knew who you were really talking about. That's the problem. I mean, at least you didn't say Barbara Walters. So,
but anyway, there was an interview, and they were saying that he said in the interview, he said the police waved me in, and they walked me to the Senate chamber.
In the interview.
And she went, there's no evidence of that. And then CNN, then somebody, I think it was on the Chris Plant show, and then he played CNN mocking him saying that.
Okay, let me ask you this: was he asked by Leslie Stahl? Maybe because this is very important. How did you get into the building? Well, didn't somebody smash a window? That's you in the Viking helmet. Isn't that a smashed window? How did you get into the building itself? Did she ask him that?
That wasn't him smashing the window.
No. He was right behind the person smashing the window.
Yeah.
So
walked in through the door with the police waving him in.
The police waved him in.
That's what he said.
Right into the building.
That's what he said.
After the window was smashed, he was waved in by the police at that point, not at some other point. Are you sure about this? Because I do have to question your credibility, Mr. Slagle, because you thought he was talking to Diane Sawyer. So
well, I'm no longer a credible witness, I guess.
I guess we'll have to hear the interview later, because I mean there's about 54 minutes there that Tucker Carlson didn't show, and he showed a snippet there, and there's all kinds of evidence that he was you do see him sitting. Where is it? He's sitting in the Senate chamber, and he's exhorting people to and yelling "Mother F" and stuff like that. So, but look. I'm always willing to listen to reopen the case and listen to more evidence. It's fun because I don't think it's going to vindicate him. But doesn't mean he shouldn't have. Hey, the government is lenient. They've got to make room for Donald Trump to be in prison right now. Apparently,
I think that's what it was. Yeah. They're pretty crowded with January 6th prisoners.
So let's pivot right now to good old Chicago. Dick Durbin endorsed Paul Vallis. Now, the last time I was on the same side as Dick Durbin, I was interviewing him at Wrigley Field on opening day a number of years ago. And kudos to the Cubs today for winning their home opener 4-0 over the Brewers. 2 hours and 20 minutes. That's all the time thanks to the pitching clock. Yeah, it was pretty fast. That's
hardly enough time to take a nap.
It's the problem. I think, it's a lot of older people are not going to enjoy these quick, fast-paced games. They're going to say, "Oh, I fell asleep, and then it was the ninth inning already." But Durbin is on Vallis's side. You were alerting us to the pension problem in the city of Chicago. Do you care to elaborate on that?
Yeah, apparently, Chicago is their pension debt is larger than most states. It's there we go, $48 billion in debt.
Yeah, well, Chicago is bigger than most states. One of the reasons
44 states, their debt is higher than 44 states.
Yeah.
So there's only 6 states that have a higher debt.
Big freaking deal. Listen, big deal. You know how we're going to pay it off? You know how you're going to pay it off?
Huh.
Brandon Johnson, running against Paul Vallis, owes about $1,000 in parking tickets. So that's how we're going to pay it off.
So Paul Vallis is going to collect on those parking tickets.
I would like to at least Denver boot his car. Do something. Yeah, that's and then I see where Jan Schakowsky, is she still representing Sidney Yates's old district on the north side? She claims that Betsy DeVos, the former education secretary under Trump, whom Schakowsky calls a shady billionaire, is helping to underwrite Vallis's campaign. And I'm thinking, Jan Schakowsky's calling people shady? I mean, oh, okay. All right, fine. And yeah,
I think all billionaires are shady.
Oh yeah, it's got to be something
Democrats.
wrong. There has to be something nefarious. All right, we've taken care of just about everything. Bruce Wolf and Tim Slagle on the weekly wrap.
Back here in the United States, as the national community mourns the loss of 6 of their own tonight, police are uncovering more details about the school shooter. They say 28-year-old Audrey Hale had an emotional disorder and pre-planned the attack. Hale, a biological woman who identified as a transgender man, killed 3 adults and 3 children Monday in an ambush at a private Christian school.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the weekly wrap. So, I want to wade into this carefully and, with all due respect. I certainly don't want to handle this like the way Joe Biden handled it when he came down to make his announcement, about the tragedy in Tennessee, and first did a nice little disquisition on ice cream, which of course is, very, very important.
Yeah, I got a lot of ice cream upstairs. Not a joke. A joke.
The thing, and of course, if Trump had done that same thing, well, he'd be indicted, which he was. So, but so much has been said about what happened. I very seldom like to quote things exactly, and I wish we had a big screen to put this on here. But Michael Brendan Doherty of National Review really, nailed it as far as I'm concerned. He wrote, "The trans heresy lives in a matrix of tech and biomedical business interests that thrive on the idea of humanity reconceiving itself as a thing as malleable as a social media avatar. It fits hand in glove with a managerial elite that would prefer to govern a different kind of human subject, one without a soul or heart, one incapable of loyalties that supersede the managerial apparatus and totally dependent on the state to vindicate its dignity." That is very eloquent language. I'll boil it down right here and say,
I didn't understand a word of it.
Well, I could parse it for you, but what it boils down to, if you want to get from Obergefell, the Supreme Court decision on gay marriage, how do you get from Obergefell to the trans crisis? And I would just say the penis is a slippery slope. So I think that more or less reduces what Michael Brendan Doherty had to say to something that's intelligible. No, it's actually very, very good. They want to rule us. That's what it comes down to. And this progressive project, we have really taken a leap to trans extremism so fast that even liberals can't keep up with it. I suppose that J.K. Rowling was responsible for the murder of those 3 children at the Christian school in Tennessee, because they're the victims, and
it wasn't done with a magic wand,
right? Terry Moran of ABC News did a report, that day, and he was talking about how Tennessee had just passed this legislation that was anti-trans. You know what? That's okay to throw that in an objective news story, but you also should put in there that there was a trans vengeance day being planned as well, and that there are radical trans people, and they don't want to release the manifesto of this woman, and I call her a woman still. They don't want to release the manifesto,
Sure.
and there's a lot of good reason not to, because you don't want the copycat crimes. But they also don't want to release it because it might give a hint as to, who are the fellow travelers on this kind of thing. And they always want to do it when it's a right wing, white supremacist thing, because they always want to indict, at least half of society for it. I mean, I can't even look at this video. I mean, it's horrible to look at it. I mean, she's
got a red hat on, and
yeah.
I can't help but wonder if her original intention was that she wanted it to get blamed on the President Trump.
That's an interesting theory, but she left I mean, I can't stand, I hate Gapers blocks for little traffic accidents on the Edens. I can't even stand looking at this. I mean, this is horrible. This is horrifying. But but she left a manifesto. So
sure. The FBI has. So by the time we get it, we won't even know if it was the original manifesto.
Right. It'll be the Unabomber or something.
A friend of mine had a good point about where we've gone, where it's gone from gay marriage to where we are now to drag shows for little kids.
Right.
What he said was that it's kind of like the Mad Mothers, is that when you and I were young, Bruce, there was no problem drinking and driving. It was sport. and we probably shouldn't have been doing that. And that's when the Mad Mothers came around and they said, you can't do that anymore. And so they started, cracking down on drunk driving, and it kind of cleared up the problem. But then the Mad Mothers were already there. It was an organization. They had all these donations. They had all these people with nice, cushy jobs at Mothers Against Drunk Driving. They didn't want to give up. So then they started lowering the alcohol limit to now it's to a point where, one beer and you can get arrested for drunk driving. And they're still lobbying to get it even lower. They're going for zero tolerance. They don't go away. And that's what happened. They got gay marriage passed, but there's this entire infrastructure that's been set up to go for gay rights. But what else?
Tim,
is there after
were you
marriage?
Listening to me before when I said the penis is a slippery slope? That's exactly the same argument.
Well, I know you started it. I know you started it out at the top.
No, you're right.
I didn't even understand what you're saying, and then did the lower, and I just thought I would put it out there.
No. I mean, you're right about that. Although, I mean, it's hard to argue against Mothers Against Drunk Driving by any stretch, but especially since
I can, because when they went down to point,
are we going to turn this into a thing that you want to have a pop after the show today? Okay, all right,
absolutely. After they went down to 0.8. It every time they got the alcohol thing, the level lowered, the accidents decreased. But something happened after they went down to 0.8. They started climbing back up again.
Oh, really?
And the reason is the law is so restrictive that now it's like a joke. You go to a party and people will brag about, what'd you blow?
Oh, jeez. Well, no, I mean, you could. There's a law of diminishing returns, but
there's no more stigma. There's no more stigma attached to drunk driving, so that people aren't as cautious.
No, I can see where it boomerangs on you. No, but I mean, there's definitely an infrastructure. Call it the deep state, call it the managerial class, whatever. But they definitely, I mean, and they have an agenda here, and it's happened at such an blinding speed. I mean, it's caught all the liberals off guard. Witness again, J.K. Rowling. So, I'm kind of, how I feel about the Second Amendment. I support it, but I don't feel good about it. So I don't mind, people saying, but I'll see something like the Washington Post had a big story about the AR-15 and its firepower and how it just can blow you away. Well, I mean, what does it matter? If they had like if it has a 22 in it, it's still gonna kill you, but they're trying to give you a nightmarish idea about it. When I mean, if you don't want the AR-15, that's one thing, but you don't have to turn it into this monstrous thing.
Well, these rifles
blow away everybody. Sorry,
these rifles that were used in Nashville, they're carbines. They're not assault rifles. They're carbines, and one of them, the High Pro carbine, was actually invented during the first assault weapon ban. It's essentially just long pistols,
right?
And
right.
It was invented during the assault weapon ban to fill the void left in the marketplace when they banned all assault weapons.
The first story I saw on the killing was the first word was one of the first words was a female, which shocked me. And now I knew, because it's never a woman who does it. So, but that's another issue. But then it said, quote, assault rifles, unquote, which I actually gave them credit for putting it in quotes, because who knows what the heck an assault rifle is. And now you're telling me that, these are things that
long pistols.
Nobody would ever, the Washington Post isn't trying to get render illegal. So,
and I don't think men are off the hook, because I understand she was taking testosterone supplements.
Oh, no. So right. Men are not off the hook.
So testosterone is still the issue in this one.
No, the only people who are off the hook are transgenders, are radical transgenders. I actually can understand, first of all, how many transgenders, not that, we should ever ignore any minority, but how many transgenders are there? I mean, we do realize that there is this thing called social contagion, and you've got teenagers now who never would have thought of changing their sex, who are doing it. I mean, it exists, especially with the internet and everything.
If I was in high school now, I remember reading The Hobbit, and I was fascinated with the idea of a ring of invisibility. And I would dream at night what I would do if I had a ring of invisibility. You know what I would do? I would go into the girls' locker room.
Jesus Christ.
That's what I was looking
at. I was looking at a nice innocent Tim thing that they shouldn't have let us read Tolkien in high school because people wanted to trans into hobbits. But no, of course you wanted to trans into the bathroom. I get
it.
Yeah.
Right. But you don't need a ring of invisibility anymore. You just have to be brave enough to show up to school in a skirt.
Oh, gee whiz.
And suddenly you're in the locker room.
So it's interesting. Apparently, the shooter had written about plans to target a different location, but was deterred by too much security. So that, I mean, everybody's got to have bulletproof doors now. Did you see where Sean Davis, he's the head of the Federalist, had a tweet that was blocked by Twitter? I thought Elon Musk was liberating Twitter.
He's still got a lot of employees.
No, because all this Sean Davis had done was tweet that there was this Trans Day of Vengeance coming up, and they locked his account for a while.
Yeah, but it wasn't Elon that did it. It was some lower level employee that was fortunate not to be fired yet.
All right. Okay. Can we go back to something fun? Yeah. Well, let's go back next segment to Michaelangelo, who's being strategically covered right now by Tim. Bruce Wolf and Tim Slagle on the weekly wrap.
Well, several events, such as September 11th, the financial crisis of 2008, and the pandemic, have shifted American core values in the past 25 years. According to a new Wall Street Journal NORC poll, Americans are pulling back from values that once defined the U.S. Priorities, such as patriotism and religion, have fallen compared to those who were interviewed back in 1998.
Tim Slagle on the weekly wrap. So, nobody believes in God anymore, or the country, or religion.
That was the plan that the Soviets actually instituted in the early 60s.
And they won.
It was kind of like they set like a zombie monster loose.
Right.
And that existed long after they were gone.
Yeah. Whitaker Chambers was right. We were on the losing side. And here we thought, when we tore down the Berlin Wall and ended communism. But it's, what's Putin? I mean, so we're in a lot of trouble. I would even tie it in to what happened in Nashville. Let me think about it just for a second. You know what it is? It's nobody believes in a sense of community anymore. It's the old bowling alone thing. Why, if there had actually been a community there, maybe somebody notices, and it happens all the time. Well, people do notice what's going on with these crazies who wind up shooting up schools. This didn't, you were talking in the prior segment about how, nobody was worried about drinking and driving years ago. Well, nobody was worried about anybody shooting up a school until Columbine in 1999. There have been like 15 school shootings since then. And then, you've got other kinds of shootings as well.
I say they're all copycats.
Oh yeah, they are.
That essentially this thing, what better thing to do to a loner kid than to reward him with infamy.
Right.
It's and every kid sees these. 2 weeks that we're not going to spend 2 weeks on this one because it kind of goes against the narrative.
Right.
But so they spend 2 weeks. Everyone knows the name. The picture's there on the screen. And this girl actually said before she left, before she packed up her guns and left, she said, "You're going to hear about me on the news."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. You can be famous on the news, and listen, I know I kind of was famous on the news, but you can have an empty heart inside because, it's fame. It's notoriety. That's the masses. What about the sense of community? That's where God and patriotism and religion come in. And if there's a sense of community, maybe there's somebody in the community who, it'll be like Jimmy Stewart in It's a Wonderful Life, who will notice that Mr. Gower, you're gonna poison that kid, and changes things. And there's more Jimmy Stewarts around, and not people sitting isolated, behind some computer screen and some false sense of community that she might have gotten with some radical trans people.
What was her name? Was it Violet? Was the girl that was
I thought it was like Audrey or something, not Audrey or something like that. But
the one.
So
that,
I mean, so it is
the one that all the boys. I mean, that's essentially the problem. Is we're all it's all Pottersville now, where every girl is wearing dresses that they want all the boys to look at. And that it's no longer, there's not enough Donna Reeds.
Totally. And let me say, I grew up watching Donna Reed on the Donna Reed show. And by that time, she was like a suburban matron. And then it was years later that I saw It's a Wonderful Life for the first time. And it was, oh my God, was she hot? and to me, the scene with Jimmy Stewart when they're romancing each other and he's wearing good old number 3 Buffalo Girls want to come out tonight, and she's on the phone with Sam Wainwright and you could feel the tension between them. That to me is the most romantic scene in the history of movies. Admittedly, I haven't seen a movie in at least 10 years and I didn't see Citizen Kane until I was about 50, so I'm a little bit behind the curve on that. But anyway,
did you know at that point what Rosebud was? By the time you were 50, you had to have heard it, right?
I just found out what Rosebud was like a few years ago.
Oh wow!
Now I was under the illusion there was an old Dick Van Dyke episode where Richie the son, his middle name was Rosebud. It was a Citizen Kane, of course, obviously. But the Rosebud, each letter stood for somebody else in the family. So it didn't stand, in other words, it didn't stand for Laura's hoochie, whatever. So that's what Rosebud stood for, right? I mean,
Violet Bick.
Oh, well, is that what her name was? Violet Bick?
That's the girl that liked all the boys. She would have been a TikTok influencer if
was that William Randolph Hearst? Was that William Randolph Hearst's girlfriend? I mean, is that
no? I'm still on A Wonderful Life.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, it's fine. We can be talking about on parallel tracks. I'm sure we'll meet at the end of the universe. I had sometimes these weird notions come into my head. You remember when Walt, the news business is having a hard time. TV news. I mean, the ratings are hemorrhaging. It's horrible. I noticed that the Channel 5, which I used to work for, the local station, they did a dramatic thing. The male anchors no longer wear ties. They wear the sports jacket, but it's a statement. Let me tell you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But I was thinking what they should.
Do you remember Dan Rather's sweater?
Oh yeah.
Courage.
What he wasn't saying, what's the frequency, Kenneth? Oh my God, I'm a nut. So, but I was thinking what they should do, and not just an homage to Walter Cronkite, but what they should do is they should take off their glasses with each story and sigh, like Cronkite did when he was announcing the assassination of JFK. Now, admittedly, you don't have that, a story with that impact every day. I mean, it's going to be a little difficult if you take off your glasses and go, how's the traffic out there for those people who don't have GPSs in their cars? So it is going to.
Patton Oswalt, but it's Patton Oswalt used to talk about that. He said every Spielberg movie, because that's like a classic Spielberg scene when something's happening in the distance, the actor squints and then takes off his glasses and squints again.
So, I had the next thing on the agenda was just to say that Tucker Carlson is like Lionel Hutz, and I just wanted to compare him to a Simpsons character because, no, it's just. It's kind of that.
Who's Lionel Hutz?
Lionel Hutz is it was the Simpsons. It was the attorney on the Simpsons. Very shady. But I'll move on to the next thing. So how I have this thing against CNN, specifically Don Lemon, because he worked in Chicago
and turned down stories.
Huh?
I'm sorry. Did I go too far? He turned down stories.
I'm sorry. I missed.
Don Lemon actually worked in Chicago and turned down stories.
Oh, yeah.
That was.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't even remember my own story about Don Lemon. Yes, he turned down the stories.
There's not enough stories in Chicago to begin with.
No, you're right.
He
was right to
has
do
such
that.
a wealth of them that he can.
Well, there's another Chicago guy. His name is Bill Weir. He used to work at Channel 9 in their morning show. He was the funny sportscaster on Channel 9. As I know him very, very well because I turned down the job at Channel 9 in the mornings because they didn't pay as much money as Channel 32 paid, which was where I was already at. And he got the job, and he was really good at it. And he left after a couple of years, and he's been at CNN for a long time, and he's their chief climate correspondent. So that I'm going to have it in for Bill Weir at the first opportunity, of course. So my motives are impure. I admit that. But I was reading this story in National Review. One of their contributing columnists had written about apparently the, what's that UN agency with all the letters in it? IPNC or something like that.
I was thinking NCAA, but that's not right.
Yeah, no, that's close. And I don't even IPCC. Yeah, I don't even know who the Final Four are right now. But he's so they came out with another scenario where we're in a lot of trouble. And this guy from National Review wrote an article just citing all the instances. Al Gore saying the ice caps were going to melt, and all the things that have not gone right with the climate business for several hundred years now. I mean, the predictions are always off, and even the models, even the climate models can't predict what happened 300 years ago correctly, and we know what happened, but they don't get it right. So,
well, they're actually like real models. They're only good for about 10 years.
So anyway, there was also a story in this TV trade publication where a guy said CNN's trying to bounce back. There's this guy Licht who's running the place now, and he wants to reclaim the wreckage that Jeff Zucker made of the place. So I tweeted that Licht would do well to muzzle Bill Weir, who is basically a climate alarmist, because what Weir had said was the time bomb is ticking, but we have the guide on how to defuse the bomb right in our hands, which basically, as the National Review guy said, was just him being the spokesbeing for the NPCC or whatever it is, and hardly, an objective voice. Sure. So I tweeted that. Well, Bill Weir tweeted back to me. Okay. Don Lemon never does that. And Bill said, Bruce, I always enjoyed your stuff. And and this article is garbage. Why don't we talk together, recall old times and stuff like that. So he really got me there. So I wrote back, oh, no, I didn't enjoy your stuff, Bill. I was envious of your stuff. And I suggested that what we do is we reprise his role when he was back at Channel 9 as the sportscaster. I could be the news anchor. And when I call over Tommy Skilling to do the weather, I could say, Tommy, how about the work of Coonan, who believes that all your climate stuff is nonsense? And then Bill could chime in and say, but he's just a physicist. And then Bill could pick up a leftover pie from Bozo's Circus and throw it in my face. So I didn't hear from Bill on that one, which, I thought it was a nice little fantasy I had there. But anyway, just trying to tell you that they haven't forgotten about Bruce Wolf over at CNN.
Okay. Nice to hear.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap.
This program originated in Chicago.
Circus is on the air.
Another Sunday presentation of family classics.
Our show is on the air every morning here at Channel 9.
This is WGN Television 9 in Chicago.
Jack Rickhouse back with you once again. Harry Carey, it's a beautiful day for Blackhawks hockey on good old Channel 9.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap. Yeah, those are all the faces of Channel 9 celebrating its 75th birthday.
That's amazing how long television has been going on. They talk about radio. Radio's that's like twice what radio was, the entire life of radio.
Well, wait, radio has been around since Marconi.
I mean the golden age.
Sure. Radio died the day Jack Benny went to television. As you know, I got my start in broadcasting as the sound man on the Jack Benny show in the 1940s. I would make the sound of his trousers chafing together as he strode across the stage. But I never worked for Channel 9. And, the Tribune had a story that said basically the biggest star of Channel 9 over its 75 years was Bozo the Clown. And that's probably an accurate assessment. I would say Garfield Goose was a distant second. Now, just this week, we lost Bill Zamey, who was a writer. You may have read some of the stuff. He had the last interview with Johnny Carson, and he wrote about Johnny Carson, and he wrote about all these celebrities. And David Letterman had a beautiful tribute to him this last week. He said, when you were interviewed by Bill Zamey, you felt that you were being the interviewee was not as cool as the interviewer. And that was, and I happen to know this Bill Zamey. I haven't talked to him in decades, but when I would substitute on the radio, I'd always have him on because it was basically a Chicago product. And he had written a couple of Tribune magazine pieces about Bozo the Clown that got into such minutia, but it was still, he made it interesting and it was very funny, but I would rib him mercilessly. And, he took it in stride. But when you growing up in Michigan, are there certain TV characters?
We had two Bozos.
Oh, that's got to be very disconcerting to a child.
It was very confusing because CKLW in Canada had a Bozo, and WDIV in Detroit had a Bozo, and they were. And so it'd be really weird. Is that same costume, different voice? There was something peculiar, and what happened. What happened was I don't know if it went to court. I don't know, but how it was rectified. But it was determined that the Canadian Bozo would be the only Bozo, and
they have their turf.
Yeah.
Well, it's basically Larry Harmon Productions. The cartoon guy who licensed this stuff around the country. So you see that. That's
right. And I'm sure when they franchised out the Bozo, it's like, well, this one's in Canada, this one's in Detroit. That's just they had no idea that there would be two Bozos in the market. So what happened was after it was straightened out, we had a Bozo and Oopsie Daisy was the one that sounded exactly like the other bozo.
All right, Tim, when you're done with this filibuster, I'll be no. No, I understand because so there used to be this. I knew a couple of guys who had written pie sketches for the Bozo Circus. That was their standard sketch, was a pie sketch, and they liked me because they noticed that at one time on TV or radio it said that I liked Walker Percy. Walker Percy, a great novelist. These guys were saying, "Oh no," they wanted to talk to me because all they did was write pie sketches. And so I interviewed this guy. Wrote a book once, and it was about not about Bozo. It was about
there's Oopsie Daisy,
little devices. Oh, that's fantastic! Little devices that you could buy that he had created. And they were fictional devices. One of them was like new car smell in a can or something, and whatever. But and I'm interviewing him, and he was really dry. And I'm sitting in there interviewing him on TV, and I said, his name was Chris Bittler, and I said, Chris, of all the Bozo sketches that you wrote for Bozo, which pie sketch stands out to you the most? And he just deadpan, the one where Bozo gets hit in the face with a pie. So I mean, I almost lost it right there. Yeah, here's to 75 years of good old Channel 9.
And how many years of Bozo is that? How many years of Bozo? 75 was Bozo.
On my 8th birthday, September the 11th, 1961, and he was around for about 20 years or something, 25 years, and then they reduced him to it one day a week, and then they buried his ashes in bucket number 6 or something like that. By the way, I don't know if they keep calling it Channel 9 good old number 9. I'm the guy who popularized the whole good old number thing in Chicago. Oh yeah, wow. Yeah. Also, I popularized Boom Shakalaka. Now, Sly and the Family Stone came up with it, but it kind of have gone out of use for quite a while, and I'm the one who made it my home run call, and so I just want to take credit for
sure
being the guy who stole it from Sly and the Family Stone. So let's go back right now. We were going to, because you've been very patient sitting in front of Michelangelo's David since the beginning of this show. And there was a controversy this week about a school, and what state was that in again? The school where was it Florida?
I think it was Florida.
Yeah, right.
Florida.
And of course Florida, where everything happens, where a principal was fired because the parents weren't notified that in a class the students were going to be shown a picture of Michelangelo's David. The pertinent parts of Michelangelo's David at issue here are his.
Okay, now boys and girls, just imagine the shape of Florida. But make it about the size of Cape Cod.
A little side view, you're so right about that. Anyway, now it's interesting. This was a Renaissance art class for 6th graders, which it's unbelievable. I didn't realize that Florida would ever even get into the Renaissance. But and they would show this every year. But the principal was fired because or the art teacher was fired because they didn't notify the parents that they were going to show this. So it was a procedural thing. They didn't notify the parents. So, well,
yeah, in their defense, it is a naked man.
Right. No, I agree.
You can say, well, it's art, it's culture. No. It's a naked man, and they're 6th graders.
Right. Exactly.
I mean,
that's common sense.
And all the articles about it in the paper, on the news, it's like, oh, the teacher thinks that kids can't look at this. Well,
right.
Meanwhile, they're cropping the picture of David like Elvis on Ed Sullivan.
And you know what? I mean, you're right. They're 6th graders. I mean, within 3 or 4 years, Tim is going to be in favor of them having drinking and driving. But before then, let's let the parents have control. No, I totally get it. I get it. So, you see that George Washington University is changing the name of its team. The name of the team was the Colonials, which kind of makes sense because, George Washington, I don't know if you know your U.S. history that much. This guy was a slaveholder, real bad dude, but had wooden teeth. Couldn't really trust him. But they named a university after him, and the team was called the Colonials, which makes sense. They're changing the name now because Colonials has too much of a connotation.
Is it still an authorized furniture style?
Well, first of all, if you're going to get rid of Colonials, just flip over all the cards. Get rid of George Washington University while you're at it. And why did you tear his visage down from Mount Rushmore? And then, if you're going to allow all that and you're going to destroy all these American institutions and our cultural artifacts, can you really blame a face-painted guy in a Viking helmet for storming the Capitol then? I mean, if you want to tear all that stuff down, why can't he tear this stuff down?
They could just change the name to the Colonialists, and
there we go.
That would probably be college approved, and the mascot could just be a white man.
So, as breaking news while we were on the air today about Donald Trump, and also, but more importantly, the Gwyneth Paltrow ski trial is over, and she won the case. This was in some hoity-toity Utah resort area. She apparently allegedly collided with another guy and made it so he has to take the bunny hill for the rest of his life, and he sued for $3 million. He lost, and Gwyneth Paltrow won. To me it sounded like it was a he said ski shed. I'll wait for the laughter in that one. So, but you have some insight on this, Tim, don't you?
Well, he said that he lost his sense of smell, which is really it's a really tragedy, which means that he would not be able to enjoy one of Gwyneth Paltrow's vagina scented candles.
That would be a great closing argument but I understand the attorney for the guy was absolutely in love with Gwyneth Paltrow, and who isn't? She had a girl crush on Gwyneth Paltrow. So yeah.
Really? Right. And about the time that Goop started coming out, she became less and less attractive with me progressively. It's one of the things she does. We were talking about this in the break. I don't think it came up in the trial. One of the things she does is she uses ozone therapy rectally.
Well, that's the way you should use it. I would never take it orally. I mean, you got to be a nut if you don't take it that way. Tim, that is a wonderful way to end today's show. Well, we come out the bottom. Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap.
And that's the Weekly Wrap on radio and television. Follow Bruce at Bruce Wolf Shy on Twitter and Tim at timslagle.com. The Weekly Wrap with Bruce Wolf, a CP Pods production.